everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Hitched and Happy. Today I have my very first guest with me on the podcast. She is an elopement photo expert, dare I say. This is Solana. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are doing what you're doing.
Well, yeah, so my name is Solana. I do elopements in Banff National Park. That's kind of my expertise. Anywhere in the Alberta Rockies, that's me. So for me, my journey of elopements started from weddings. So I did wedding photography before I did elopements. However, my first ever wedding was an elopement. I just didn't know that was a thing at the time. So I was like, oh, this is a wedding, just a smaller version, but it was an elopement. And yeah, that's when I fell in love with kind of the industry. So from there, I did weddings, and I just didn't really feel fulfilled by just doing weddings. And then eventually I saw people that were doing just these elopements in the mountains, full time, and I was like, whoa, that's so cool, I want to do that. So then come last year, I was like, okay, I'm going to transition my business that way. And then so now in 2024, that's all I do is elopements, and I help couples elope in the Rockies. I bring them from everywhere. They all come to me, and I just give them a day that is kind of what they're looking for, which is a fun wedding day in the Rockies. So that's kind of me and my story.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The thing I love about what you do is that you're very involved in the whole process. I feel like you must meet with your clients lots ahead of time to help them not only photograph the day but design the day. Is that true?
Yeah, so most of my couples are not from Canada, actually. Only about 10% are from Canada, and that's Ontario, so they're not even from Alberta. So most people I work with don't know anything about the area. They obviously don't live here, so yeah, how could they? So for me, I really felt like there was a bit of like a pain point in their journey trying to figure out how to elope, just because there's not a lot of information online about eloping. It's really tricky to plan an elopement day if you don't know what is involved in an elopement day. So for me, I knew that already, so I was like, why don't I just help my couples and kind of draft up their day with them and really kind of just dive into things so they can have a day exactly how they want it, even if they don't really know what that is yet. And we kind of just work together to kind of create a day. So for me, I give them questionnaires, things like that, so I can get to know my couples on a deeper level to really give them an experience that they want. Because a wedding day is an elopement day, is so personalized, whereas a wedding day is a little bit more, everyone does kind of the same thing. Whereas an elopement day, there's really no cap on what you can do or what you can't do. It's completely personalized to you as a couple. So it can be tricky, and that's kind of where I come in to just really guide them through the whole process.
Amazing. And that's what we're going to be touching on today is, what is an elopement? Why do people choose to elope? Pros and cons of eloping, and what is the process? If you were like, I want to elope, but I don't know even where to start, that's what we're going to be talking about today, because I have the expert here with me.
I love chatting about elopements. This is totally my thing. I tell everyone about eloping and why they should do it. So yeah, definitely a good person to ask.
Okay, so I guess the first question is, what is an elopement?
I like to explain it like a very personalized wedding day, which I kind of touched on before. It's a wedding day that is personalized to the couple. So another way I like to present it to people who are kind of a little bit confused of like whether or not they should elope, they're not really sure, is I explain it to them this way. A wedding day is planned around your guests. An elopement day is planned around the couple. And that's really how it is, like straightforward. Like when I dive into planning someone's elopement, it's like, okay, who are these people? What do they like to do? What do they want to do? What brings them joy, And when you're planning a wedding day, it's more like, what food are we going to feed our guests? Or like, what venue is going to look nice? Like, it's very more based for the guests because you have so many people there, whereas an elopement, it's very intimate and focused around the couple. So I would say kind of, yeah, eloping is really about personalizing your wedding day. It doesn't have to be out in the mountains. It can be in the city. It can be with guests. It can be without guests. It's just a wedding day that is very focused on the couple over the guests. Mm-hmm.
And how would somebody know if an elopement is the right choice for them?
Do you want to plan a wedding day around your guests, or do you want to have a wedding day that's about you? Like, it's really what it comes down to is like, do you want to have your guests really involved? Do you really want them to be a part of the experience, or do you want you guys to be the center focus of the experience? just kind of for a little bit of context, when you're in a wedding day as a couple, it's very busy and there's a lot happening, and it's really hard to really just soak it all in and just experience, you're getting married, and just experience that together. It's really tricky just because of how wedding days are built. There's specific things you have to do. You got to do them in a certain time, and that's it. And then you meet together at the end and it's like, whoa, what just happened? Whereas an elopement day, there's time throughout the whole day where it's just focused on you guys bonding together and experiencing a day together.
Mm-hmm. Now, I feel like and you can tell me if this is a myth or not, but it's kind of like a common knowledge out there that elopements save you money. Mm-hmm. Is that true? And can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it is totally true, which is really cool because you can still have like such a bougie elopement experience and still be under cost of a wedding. So I just looked this up a little bit ago. The typical average wedding cost here for just an average wedding, it's not even like a bougie wedding, it's also not a budget wedding, is between 22 grand to 30 grand. So that's a typical average wedding here in Canada. Mm-hmm. When it comes to elopements, a typical elopement ranges anywhere from you can go as low as like $1,000, wouldn't recommend. But typically I like to say stay between $5,000 and $15,000. $15,000 is more on the bougie end of things. So again, you're way under still the typical wedding price of an average wedding, and you can have a bougie elopement for 15 grand. So you are saving money there and still having an epic day. And what's really awesome is that with an elopement day, all that money is going towards an experience with you and your best friend. This is an experience. You're making memories. You're doing things a little bit differently out of your ordinary thing to do, or just things that really mean to you. And that money is being invested into those experiences and not, again, like your guests. You're not spending the money experience for the guests. It's for you. So you could do cool activities, you can go to crazy locations and be well under budget.
Would you say that people invest more money in photography in their photographer and an elopement rather than like a wedding?
Mm-hmm. So to kind of touch on that, you need to understand wedding photographers versus elopement photographers. Mm-hmm. We are different. You might not know that looking into it, but you'll see that when you look at prices and packages. Like if you're seeing a wedding photographer, they offer a completely different experience than your elopement photographer mm-hmm. will. And when it comes to an elopement, it is extremely, extremely important that you have someone who is an expert and who you really love, because they are the one that's going to make or break your day when it comes to elopement. They are not just your photographer. Actually, taking photos is pretty low on the job that they have for elopements. So your elopement photographer is going to be your day of coordinator. They're going to plan. Even if they don't offer a full planning experience, they're still going to help you find locations. They're going to help you deal with permits. They're going to help you deal with parking issues at locations. All these things is going to be involved because they're experts in that area. Whereas a wedding photographer, they get to show up. There's a timeline made already. there's locations you're going to. I have couples that leave their phones in their hotel room because they know that I'm just going to guide them through the whole day mm-hmm. Because, I'm the expert here and, I create the experience as a photographer. So it is so, so important that you hire a photographer that includes that as well, because it'll really make or break your elopement day if you hire a photographer who doesn't really understand that, because they're not going to know all those little things. And now it's on you as the couple to figure that out. All those things that I mentioned, most people don't know what an elopement consists of. They don't. And that information is not online. So if it's not online and you don't know, you're going to miss out on so much that could have been a part of your day, little activities here and there, just scheduling at different locations. You're going to think that you only need 2 hours to elope. This is so wrong. I start at a minimum of 4 hours, and I don't even think 4 hours is enough. So yes, this is why it's so important to hire a photographer who includes that kind of stuff for you and who is valued at a higher price, because it is your full experience, literally derives from your photographer.
Yeah, so maybe you need less vendors mm-hmm. in total because your photographer is acting as many vendors in exactly.
one. Yes, this is very true.
Now that we're on the topic of vendors, what are the vendors that you need at an elopement? Mm-hmm. And also with that, where do people start planning? Maybe this is a separate question, but mm-hmm. what vendors should they book first?
Okay, so first things first, photographer. Like I mentioned, they can help you with a bunch of things. And if they can't, you can know what they can help you with right away. So if you fall in love with the photographer and you're like, we want her, but she doesn't offer this, now you know what else you need to have. But first of all, you want to find the photographer first because they can help with a huge portion of the things that you need. Secondly, video. If you want a video to capture your day, which is a really great option, just because you're eloping, chances are a lot of the people you love and care about aren't going to be there. So it's a really great way to relive the day with them. And then if you were to also have a reception a little bit later on back home with family, it's a great way to really showcase your day with your loved ones so they can kind of be a part of it. So a videographer would be also a great choice. The next thing you would want to book is your officiant. Your officiant is going to legally marry you. So if you can't find an officiant, you're not getting married. That's just how it goes. So you want to find your officiant next. Typically, your photographer can send you recommendations, but if not, you just go onto government websites and they'll have lists of officiants and you can kind of just go with one. It should be pretty simple and similar kind of no matter where you elope. So yeah, that'd be kind of like the third thing. And then fourth and fifth, it would be your hair and makeup artist and your bouquet and boutonniere. With your hair and makeup artist, obviously there's so many of them and you just pick what you like. It doesn't matter too much. There are very cool services in the US where your hair and makeup artist will come with you to your elopement day and actually fix your makeup and your hair as you are out and about exploring, because it gets a little bit messed up and they're there to do it. So that's a cool option. Unfortunately, I can't offer that in Canada because no one does it. But it's so cool. So if you are eloping anywhere, you might want to check into that. It's very cool. And then your bouquet and boutonniere, most florists have like kind of elopement packages where they just have an elopement bouquet and boutonniere. It's super easy. So you definitely kind of want to look into that. That's what I provide to my couples. And it's just a super great option if you're just looking for a simple kind of bouquet that you like and a boutonniere. So yeah, that's literally all you need to elope. Like, it's pretty simple. That's what I include in my packages just because that's kind of all the basic things that you need to elope and have a great elopement day. Anything after that, like activities, like let's say you wanted to do like a helicopter ride, things like that, then you would book that afterwards as well. Book the helicopter company, whatever it is. But yeah, it's pretty simple.
When you say you include it in your packages, elaborate on that. What do you mean there?
So for me, I have an all-inclusive kind of elopement experience package, and it just includes everything that you need to have a great elopement day, which is myself, your photographer, the officiant, the hair and makeup artist, and your bouquet and boutonniere. You can go elope and have an epic day with just these vendors. And then I also kind of help you with planning, coordinating, all that, like I mentioned before. But these are kind of the main people that you need to be a part of your team on your elopement day. And then from there, we can really like branch out to really personalize your day. But that's kind of the basics that you need. So if you are kind of at the planning stage, you're trying to figure out what you need to book those guys. And once you have them booked, whatever you want after that is totally just optional and up to you.
Or if they just book you as their photographer,
exactly.
They get everything all together.
Yeah, if you don't want to deal with all that, you're coming from a different country or you're just like not about planning, then yeah, you could just go through me. So that works as well.
Yeah, I feel like that might be common within elopement photographers, so that's why you want to book your photographer first.
Exactly.
Because they might offer a package that includes like your officiant and the bouquet and boutonniere, so then we don't have to worry about that stuff because our photographer is going to take care of it.
For me, I also deal with timelines and crafting my couple's timelines. So drafting up kind of an elopement timeline can be really tricky, kind of like what I mentioned before. Like, most people don't know how to do that. They don't know what a timeline looks like because, again, you can't really just Google elopement timeline and you won't find anything. So it's really tricky. And so for me, and kind of my process is I send my couples a questionnaire, and basically it just really allows me to kind of get to know them on a deeper level, ask them things like things they love to do together, hobbies, how they met, just really get to know who they are and their stories and just what really makes them tick. And then from there, I can kind of take their answers and really think of using my own professional kind of opinion and suggest like different things to include in their day. Locations, like if they're like, we really love waterfalls, obviously we're going to find some epic waterfalls for them and put that in that timeline. And basically I draft up a
a few different timelines, and they can kind of visually see their elopement day before actually choosing one. So they can see like, okay, this is what my day is going to look like in 4 hours if it's a little bit more rushed, or this is what my day is going to look like in 8 hours with a little bit more time, and things like that. So they can actually visually see, it'll be like, oh wait, yeah, I do need more than 2 hours, you know, before, because everyone thinks like, oh, I just need 2 hours. I'm like, no, you don't. You actually need way more time than that. So then,
especially with if you're traveling.
Yeah.
Traveling takes a lot of time.
It takes time. Yeah, and there's different things like let's say you're doing a helicopter elopement. Well, you have to be there an hour early, so you have to plan for that. You also have to plan for shuttles. If you're taking a shuttle, like that takes time. They're delayed, things like that. But overall, like elopement timelines are very flexible for the most part. Like I love to make them as flexible as possible with the least timelines and deadlines that we need. So things like a helicopter will have a deadline, so I like to keep those at the beginning of the day. So if we need more time somewhere, we can just take it and we don't have to feel rushed. If you want to spend a little bit more than an hour and a half at a location, we can do that, because it doesn't matter. You're eloping, this is your day, you know, do what feels right to you. And yeah, that's kind of that.
So do you have some pros and cons of eloping if people are deciding? Because right now, everything you're saying, I'm like, I want to do an elopement and a wedding.
Same.
Because I want my family involved, and I want to have all those like moments of like walking down the aisle with the family, but I also want epic photos in the mountains. So can you do both?
Yes, that is actually, I love that.
Just the first day, go get married on a mountain. The second day, do a normal wedding.
Yeah, no, this is actually so common, and I have a lot of couples that do this. They choose to kind of do both things. So one thing I see very typically is the couple will travel here, and they'll do their elopement with me in the Rockies, and then maybe a month later or something, few weeks later, they'll head home, do a reception, and show the photos, the videos, and just have that party with their family, because a lot of people kind of want that. Kind of a second option, you can just do like straight up 2 weddings. It doesn't matter. Like no one's gonna question anything. It could be a surprise, like you could go elope and then have a wedding and then just be like, surprise, we're already married. But I think the best option is to just kind of like have that elopement, get married, and then like do a reception later on.
Yeah, it's good to know that you, like, even if you still want to involve your family, but you also want to elope, there are options to have the best of both worlds.
Exactly. Yeah, when couples are kind of trying to decide like what they want to do, because sometimes people reach out to me before they're even sure if they want to elope yet, and I tell them like, you know, what is the thing that's holding you back from eloping right now? And typically it's the family aspect. They're like, yeah, I want to celebrate with my family. I'm like, well, still celebrate with your family, but just come do those things that you want to do privately with me for an elopement, and then do all those things that you wanted from a wedding later on, a few days later or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's so cool. So we have talked a lot about the pros, but if you have any more pros, you can throw them in there. But are there any like cons to eloping?
So kind of like just what I mentioned is a little bit of a con would be like not having your family actually present there. You can have guests at your wedding, you just won't be able to have like, you know, like 50 people or your whole extended family.
What's kind of like the max amount of guests that you've seen at an elopement, or that you would recommend?
So here in Banff, the limit to have a ceremony like the guest size within Banff National Park without reserving a site is 20. So I say no more than 20 for my own elopements. However, elopements are typically probably around 10 or under. That's more traditionally kind of what we want for an elopement day. However, like if you have a big family and you want immediate family and you're a little bit over, then 20 is kind of the max. But I would say elopements are never over 20 people. Like if you're going over, now it's kind of like an intimate wedding type thing. But yeah, like you don't have to just elope just the two of you. You can elope with a few friends, a few family members, whatever it is.
Or you can do it just the two of you.
Or you can do it just the two of you, which I always love more. But
and then you just need people to, I guess you would be a witness.
Yes, I'm a witness.
And maybe another vendor can be a witness.
Exactly.
The officiant cannot witness, right?
No. So you need 2 witnesses here in Alberta. It'll change where you are.
Yeah.
But here, it's usually myself, and then if I'm not working with a videographer, then I'll just bring someone out just to come witness your ceremony for you. So you don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
Sounds great. Okay. So any other pros, cons to elopement?
So another con would be, this is probably the biggest con, is weather, unpredictable weather. Because you plan anything outside, you're just taking a chance on the weather. This is something you want to kind of really like talk with your photographer about, kind of the best time for the elopement wherever you're eloping. For here in Alberta, the best months are kind of like end of May, June, and then September, mid-October. That's kind of the best time for like the best weather. This year it was so crazy, and it was snowing at the end of June, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to everyone I told that it wasn't going to be snowing. So again, you can't even predict it, but typically, yeah, you want to kind of be in between the seasons, so before it gets too hot and touristy or like too cold, and then you're risking the cold. But again, like, you know, weather can always throw things at you. It could rain, it could snow, it could be smoky. That's a big one here. Whatever it is, it can always happen, and it's pretty hard to have a backup location when you're eloping. I don't do it because it's just really hard and it's not really possible for the most part. It's just really expensive.
Like, it's hard to have an indoor backup location unless you're going to, like, pay for an indoor location in the first place, right?
So it doesn't really work, but I tell couples, you know, embrace the weather. The weather here, at any rate, is usually pretty spotty. So if it's raining, it'll stop in, like, 20 minutes. So if we have to just camp, like, sit out in our car for 20 minutes, it's just what we do, and that's how I navigate it. But again, that's just something you're risking, obviously, because we're outside. So that would be the biggest con, I would say. But it doesn't have to be. You know, you can embrace the weather,
and you can get really
snow.
Epic photos in the rain.
Exactly.
I've always wanted it to rain. And I think I had this one time. It was raining, and the bride literally sat in the mud in her wedding dress.
It adds a bit of like personality and character to your day, a little bit more to the story.
Where should you elope? How do you decide?
Yeah, so that is a loaded question. There's so many beautiful, beautiful places in the world you can elope, and you can really elope anywhere. Where you choose to elope is really going to come down to you as a couple. Like, obviously, there's kind of like trendy elopement locations. Banff is one of them. Colorado is one. Iceland is one. Hawaii is one. So yeah, those are kind of like stereotypical elopement locations. But I wouldn't choose it on the stereotypical, you know, locations. I would suggest you want to kind of, you and your partner kind of sit down, select different locations that either you really love, just bucket list locations. Maybe it's locations you've been to together, or maybe it's a location where you met, like maybe you guys met in a different country, things like that. Things that are kind of personal to you, and just kind of write them down. Each write some down, and then just kind of compare the lists and just talk about it and see what you come to and the location you get at the end of it. Once you discuss it, you really can't go too wrong with the location. The things you want to keep in mind, though, when you are choosing a location is if you have a date, you want to think about weather in the different locations. So let's say you want to elope July 12th. Okay, so depending on the location you're in, some countries that's winter, some countries that's summer. For some countries that's peak tourist season, for some countries it's not. So it just really depends on what you're looking for weather-wise. If you're wanting snow, if you're wanting summer, if you're happy with heat, if you're like, we want it a little bit cooler, that's going to determine your answer. Same with crowds. Like, are you fine with crowds? Are you wanting less crowds? Maybe your location's not very touristy and it doesn't matter. Like, things like that is kind of like what you want to keep in mind when you're choosing a location. Another thing would be activities. So if you want to kayak around glaciers, but you want to elope in Mexico, you know, that doesn't add up. So things like that you have to think through before kind of selecting your location. Another thing would be legalities. So if you are wanting to elope in a different country, what are the legal laws for getting married in that country? Canada's a really easy one. If you want to elope here, you literally just need to pick up a marriage license, and that's it, and it transfers to your country back home. But for some other countries, you have to do literal blood tests to actually get married in that country.
Crazy.
So, and then some countries also don't recognize your marriage back in your home country. So those are all things that you need to kind of keep in mind when you are choosing a elopement location. When it comes to kind of your vendors too, like if you have a specific elopement photographer in mind, chances are they do travel, but that is something to kind of consider as well. Like if you're dead set on someone, make sure they can travel. Another thing would be like what type of scenery you want to see. So if you're like wanting the ocean, or you're wanting mountains, or you're wanting waterfalls or canyons, you know, all those factors factor in to where you elope. So yeah, I think that would be everything. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I personally learned a lot about elopements today just from this conversation. Yeah. It's really cool how you can personalize it to you. But you don't have to cut out all your family if you don't want to, and you can still have a fancy bougie experience if you want.
Yeah, there's no rules to eloping. I tell this to couples all the time. They ask me, "Oh, can we do this?" I'm like, "You don't have any rules. You can do whatever you actually want to do. It doesn't matter." Like, I'm all about personalization with my own couples, and most elopements should be kind of based on that. It's just a personal experience with you and your partner that just really showcases who you are. And that's really what it comes down to. You guys can do whatever you want on your elopement day. There's no rules. No one's stopping you from doing anything. So just keep that in mind when you're planning. If someone's telling you you can't do that, they're wrong. Because you can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being my first guest on
so
this podcast all about wedding planning. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. I imagine there'll be show notes, but
Yeah.
it's Solana Crowe Creations, and that's same for my website as well. But yeah, come say hi on Instagram. I would love to see you guys.